Um, Hello, welcome to the first cabinet meeting of 2025. Um, it already feels as if we've been back quite a long time because quite a lot has happened since the last time we met, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But before we start these proceedings, may I bring your attention to some housekeeping matters? Um, there's no expected fire alarm testing today, so if the fire alarm sounds, please follow the fire and emergency procedures and leave by the nearest fire exit. As there is only one door to this room, that is that one over there. Can you use your microphone when addressing the meeting? Make sure it's switched off when you're not using it. And of course, make sure your mobile devices are turned to silent. I'll try and do that and remember that as well. So item number 1 is apologies. We have apologies from Councillor Lowry and from Councillor Dan. That's it, other than that. And I would, at this point, like to welcome Professor Steve Madden to this, his first meeting as our new Director for Public Health. Welcome to you, Steve, and look forward to hearing from you over the years to come. We're really excited about you being here, and I hope you're excited to be here too. Declarations of interest. Do members have any? No? Okay. Minutes of the last meeting, which was the 9th of December. Can I sign them as a true record, please? Thank you very much indeed. All agreed? Yes, indeed. Thank you. There have been no questions received from the public at this meeting. So there we are. Chair's urgent business. Do I have any urgent business, Jamie? Nothing? Thank you very much. In which case, I'm going to move to item 6 on the agenda. Now, Councillor Jemima Lang, who's the Cabinet Member for Children's Social Care, Culture and Communications, is going to introduce this report, and David Haley also here if we have any tough questions.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. This is a regular report that we've been bringing to Cabinet, and as you can see, the financial position for children's services continues to be highly challenging, with a key pressure continuing to be the increased cost of placements for children in care. Primarily, a national shortage of foster carers is leading to an increase in children being placed in residential children's homes, and a small number of children are being placed in unregistered settings. I'll say a bit more about how that affects Plymouth in a sec. The cost of these already very expensive placements continues to rise significantly above what was forecast when budgets were set in September 2023. Controls and scrutiny are in place in the service to ensure the right children are in care, and that the programme of work in place addresses current practice issues and wider market sufficiency. And I think the report is very, very honest about the work we're doing, where we need to improve, and the challenge that we're facing. Because I want to be really open and public about this pressure that we are trying to address. The Family Homes for Plymouth Children programme is in place to ensure children in care are in placements that will meet their needs from when they first come into care, which will improve outcomes for children and reduce cost to the council over time. And this report provides a full update about this programme of work. This includes, as I say every time, recruiting more of our own foster carers and supporting our foster carers to be able to take children with more complex needs who may be currently in the residential placements, which I talked about. We are starting to see some impact, with some progress being made for a small group of children who've been in residential care and are now being supported to move into family placements with our own foster carers. And this is really a significant part of our work. Much more of this is planned in this area. And we've also made some really good progress on our use of unregistered placements currently. with only 3 children in unregistered placements, and 2 of those are in provision that is registered by the CQC, and 1 will be moving to a registered setting shortly. And we're also making good progress in opening our own children's homes, and are hoping that our first home will open in autumn of 2025, subject to Ofsted registration. So we are making progress. It's a very difficult journey and a very long journey. And as I say, the report is brutally honest about what we're facing, but it is encouraging to see, Leader, that we are making progress in areas of this really significant issue for the council. Thank you.
Thanks very much indeed, Jemima. We're going to hear some good news for the service in our budget conversation later on. Any questions from any of you on this? No? Okay, thank you. So in which case we will note the report, if that's okay with everybody. Agreed? Thank you. And then we go to item number 7. Now, item number 7 would normally be given by Councillor Lowry, but as he is not here, in my role as leader, as you all know, I've got to deputise for the cabinet members when they're not able to be here. If I just give a quick intro and then hand over to David, if that's all right. I'm sure we'd all feel a lot more confident if we did it that way. Later on in the agenda, we got the actual draft budget report, and that includes a full update on the provisional settlement. So it is provisional until we receive the final settlement at the end of this month. Usually, though, to be honest, we don't have a lot of change at this point. I mean, there have been occasions, I think, where our fund has actually gone down by the time the final settlements actually arrive. So, you know, we're holding our breath. And of course, we've got to note that this is the last time we hope now for quite some time that it'll be a 1-year settlement of allocations. We've been used in the past, in the previous governments, to having a multi-year settlement. For the last dozen years, we've been used to having this annuality, which has, cursed us really in terms of being able to make medium-term decisions, let alone long-term decisions. But to be fair to the Chancellor, she hasn't had the time to do anything in time for this year. So we are having this 1-year settlement, but in future years, we will look forward to having multi-year settlements. I think it's really important to recognise that the Local Government Association, as well as member councils like us, this is a real victory for the lobbying that SECT's done to try and change this situation. The other thing to say, I suppose, is that the settlement will, and this year's settlement a little bit, and certainly the next multi-year settlement will reflect this. The government have made it plain that they want to see the restoration of money, distribution of money based on deprivation and activity. So places like ours, which have a low council tax base but high demand for services, should see an increase in their resources. We'll obviously wait to see the extent of that not in this year, but the future multi-year settlements. So if we could say that there has been a number of increased fundings for us. The social care grant The Adult Social Care Market Sustainability and Improvement Fund remains. New Homes Bonus has not been deleted. It has been reduced a little bit, but it's still there, hanging on for dear life. Services grant gone, but there is a new recovery grant, and that's very welcome indeed. And a new Children's Social Care Prevention grant, which is a ring fence grant, Deputy Leader, and that's worth 1.4 to us, 1.4 million for Plymouth. And the budget report lists the grants and movements from 24 to 25. So I think it's fair to say, David, that it's been a better settlement than I guess we hoped for. It's going from 78 million to 91 million in grants is always going to be welcome if you think about where we have been for so many years. But with the cumulative effect of so many cuts to our funding over the last 14 years, it's going to take a little while to get the equilibrium back. But austerity, I think the end of austerity is nigh. David, could I invite you to clarify my ramblings there, please?
Thank you, Leader, and no ramblings at all. That was a clear message, it was to me at least, so thank you for that. I have very little to add, I think, other than the key points that you made so eloquently, which is we were promised a 3-year settlement. For all kinds of reasons, we've ended up with a 1-year funding settlement again this year, but that's been explained, and we are promised that when we get to the spring we will get a fiscal event which should start looking at a 3-year settlement for local authorities, which is what we as a sector, we as Plymouth City Council, and of course the LGA support as well, have been lobbying for. So it's good that that's been listened to, as you said, Leader. The main points being New Homes Bonus is a bit of a surprise because we were sort of expecting that one to disappear. It's not worth a lot of money to us, but it's 32,000 that we will take. The revenue support grant, which has been dwindling for many years, has started to upturn a little bit. It's increased by CPI, which is 1.7%. So at least it's still there. It's hanging on, I think, as you said, Tudor, and we'll see what happens to that one. The other things that we found out, we now know what the rules are for council tax going forward. We will remain at the 2.99 before we go to a referendum, and we can still use the +2% for the adult social care precept. So that's now been confirmed, and we'll be working through that. Of course, this is a draft proposed budget, so none of those decisions get made until we get to a full council in February. But what this budget does do, Leader, is set out a balanced position, which puts us in a strong position as we go into the next financial year. I think I have to say, when we get onto the actual budget report, there are risks associated with that, but this is the start of some good news, I think. Thank you.
David, thank you very much indeed, and hopefully the final settlement will give us the certainty we need to make our budget in February. So all I would like us to do now, if that's all right, is just to note the update, really. If that's all right. Is that okay? Great. We now move on to item number 8, which is the Council Tax Base Setting and Council Tax Support Scheme for 2025-26. This is in the supplement pack, pages 9 to 14. Now, I'm going to hand over to Councillor Penberthy at this point, who will introduce the report. Chris.
Thank you, Leader, and this is one that is sort of split between Councillor Lowry and myself. He has the base and I have the Council Tax Support Scheme, but I'm involved in both, so I'll deal with both. And it is a technical paper. We are required by statute to provide some figures and some information, and this paper enables us to do that. The council tax base enables us to determine what our income will be from council tax next year, but also enables precepting authorities to work out what their charges and income will be. And those are, for us, the Devon and Somerset Fire and Rescue Authority and the Devon and Cornwall Police and Crime Commissioner. So they need this information by the end of January, and we're therefore providing it. I know that you talk a lot about our council tax banding profile. This is one of the papers that gives us a little bit of a snapshot. Council tax nationally, when we hear about it, is defined as band D, which is the middle band of the council tax system. In bands A to C, the lower bands, 85.2% of dwellings in Plymouth are in council bands A to C. The median band, band D, accounts for 8.3%, which leaves a massive 6.2% in bands E to H. So when we hear about council tax going up and the averages of band D, in fact, that's really wrong, because for us, the average would be somewhere within the band B. So we don't gain what we need from those national figures because our housing is skewed towards cheaper council tax bands. And it's worth pointing that out, given the comments you were making last week about local government reorganisation and the potential for us to rebalance that a little through extending the city boundaries. You will remember a year ago, council made some changes to empty homes premiums and second homes premiums to enable us to charge more council tax on those properties. That kicks in from next financial year, and those are built into these figures. So we are taking forward that agreement of council. We are assuming a 97.5% collection rate, which along with the total properties is the other figure that our precepting authorities need to know. That's a reasonable expectation based on performance to date, what we will likely receive, and the economic climate. And for us, that shows council tax as providing just shy of £150 million of our budget. If we were to look back to 2010, our council tax would not have been such a massive proportion of our local budget. What that shows is that government has shifted spend from national government to local, and local people are being taxed more heavily, proportionally in terms of our income, and it explains some of the difficulties that we have to face all the time, because those local taxes aren't going up by the rate that costs are, or subsidy being reduced. So the first part of the paper, the council tax base setting, whilst being technical, does actually give us real verification for things that we talk about a lot, and I know you talk about a lot when you're arguing Plymouth's case. The other part of this paper is about council tax support, because we need to give notice of any changes to our council tax support scheme. This year has been a busy year in terms of benefit payments in Plymouth, because we've had a lot of universal credit and legacy benefits being transferred. So there's been quite a lot of change, and that makes a change to the way people are receiving benefits. We're looking at what that means for us, and we don't want to complicate a benefit system where there's quite a lot of moving plates all at the same time. So for the good of people who are receiving lots of different changes, we are not changing our scheme at all. People who are eligible for council tax support don't get a payment from us, they get a discount in their council tax. I think it's really important to say this is not a benefit we pay out, it's income that we forego to support those people who need it the most. Eligible pensioners receive 100% of their council tax, and eligible working age people receive up to 80% on a sliding scale, which is means tested. For your information, it is effectively 20% of the population of Plymouth are in receipt of this benefit, and the majority of those are of working age. And that just shows the low wage economy we have in the city and the need that we have in the city for additional support to meet deprivation. So I welcome the government's reassignment of the way that they are going to do evaluation, we need to make sure that we get enough deprivation recognised, because our council tax base and that together just show the impact of low wage on a large chunk of our population, and that has a knock-on impact for generations to come because of the number of children who grow up in that environment. And just to be open, we forego next year an estimated £22.145 million worth of support that we don't collect in council tax, because we make support available to those 20% of the population who really, really need it. It's the right thing to do, but it is a tough decision for us to make. So those are the two technicalities, one for our precepting authorities and one for all the people who do benefits advice in the city and who are benefit recipients. We recommend this paper to council if it is approved by us, and it is for council to make the final decision in January in order to meet our end of January statutory requirements. Thank you, Leader. I know David Northey might want to add technicalities to it as it's a technical paper, but I've tried to sum them up.
Thank you, Chris. David, any clarifications?
Very little to add. Thank you very much, Councillor Penberthy, for taking that, taking the mantle on that one. I just say this is a technical report, but it's important that it comes through here and through council and gets approved, because these numbers directly affect the resource assumptions that we put into the main budget report. So it's very clear that this has to be the correct numbers to feed all the way through. Thank you.
Now, can I just ask you a question? Does this go to scrutiny before it goes to council, or does it go straight to council from here?
It goes straight to council from here. We are recommending a technical paper.
Yeah.
So it's one of formula more than anything else, but we do by statute need to pass it.
Lovely, thank you. All I would like you to do now is to look at the recommendations, which are on page 9 of the supplement pack. And we have 2 recommendations to approve. One is on the council tax base and one is on the continuation of the current support scheme. So can I see all those in favour, please, of those? Thank you very much. That's unanimously carried. Thank you very much. So I now need to move on to, I suppose, the main event for today, I think, which is the draft budget report for 25-26. Now, this is on supplement pack 2, pages 1 to 46. Okay, so you should all have had that. Again, apologies for the late arrival of that, but as you'll appreciate, we are working all hours to the limit to try and make sure that we present the most up-to-date position that we can to you for today. Now, what happens with this is whatever we agree today goes into the scrutiny process next week. There'll be 2 days of scrutiny on this. Some of you will be hauled up in front of the scrutiny committee to explain yourselves. And then after that, the recommendations from the scrutiny panel, Scrutiny Management Board, will then accompany the final document on its journey to council for approval sometime in February, we hope. That's the plan at the moment, right? Okay, again, Councillor Lowry would normally be leading the charge on this, but as his deputy today, I will stumble my way through an introduction. And so it is that time of the year again, and can I just say for the start, we need to make sure that we recognise the amount of work that's gone into this paperwork. I'm going to talk about, obviously, officers in the finance department, but actually officers in all departments that have gone into this. And by the way, if I may say so, to yourselves, the Cabinet, for the amount of work that you have put in getting us to this point. And why does it matter? Well, it means we can propose today a balanced budget for the financial year 25-26. I'm glad about that because we haven't really got any choice in that matter, have we? But nevertheless, believe you me, it's easier said than done. As Councillor Penrith indicated, that costs are rising, resources are tight, and making these sums add up is a Herculean task. So we will, having said what I said, we will have a final budget report at the next cabinet meeting, hopefully in February, because we take those recommendations from scrutiny, we have a good hard look at them in the same way as they have a good hard look at us. And then that kind of final consolidated document is what ends up at the council meeting. So what is the best thing to look at out of this report? I suppose, well, first of all, again, it is just to reiterate, it is the last 1 year settlement that we'll have, and that's really welcome. The paper sets out clearly the impact of the additional funding and resources that we've had and that we have allocated. It also lays out the actions required to mitigate continuing rising demand pressures in all areas that we've been dealing with. So what does that mean? Adult social care obviously continues, the challenges in terms of funding that. We've all know about the pressures that are in ASC at the moment, but we have allocated additional funding to adult social care. Councillor Aspinall, I hope you'll acknowledge this when you go to scrutiny next week, and to say that, you know, we've allocated additional funding of £12 million for this financial year going forward, which is a considerable uplift on last year. Homelessness and emergency bed and breakfast, we've allocated additional funding to that. And I know that there will never be enough money, but the point is we have thanked the government for the resources that they have allocated for tackling that, and we're using it. In children's social care and home to school transport, it's not just additional funding, actually a total of £19 million has been added to that budget, reflecting again the ever rising costs. Some of it due to scalping of some of our most acute services, but also the continuing rise in budgets for homeschool transport as well. That is a huge pressure on children's services. And it's not just in this city, of course. We've heard these things debated now in Parliament, have we not? The overall budget funding envelope has increased. I think it's really important to say that. Combination of the revenue support grant, obviously the council tax that we're looking to levy, and the business rates that the government sets, of course. The overall envelope has increased. Now, in order to deliver a balanced budget, we have needed to draw down under £5 million of reserves to cover one-off costs. But that means that the overall increase in resources for next year is about 17 million. Appendix 1 sets out the net additional cost pressures and adjustments required, totaling over 50 million, and the offset from the resources and grants means that we need about £14 million of savings to achieve that. Again, efficiencies, etc., will deliver that. But look, I mean, overall, this is a really positive budget. Let me just run through what won't be happening. We've not closed any libraries, for example. Again, some local authorities would give their right arm to say that. We have not consolidated the additional funding from last year for grass cutting. In other words, we're keeping the uplifted. We've increased the allocation for the net zero budget to reinforce our commitment to that, and I'm sure that was a smile across Councillor Bryersdale's face there. Additional allocations will be made to key demand-led services, and the other thing that this budget contains is that it confirms our commitment to Plymouth Active Leisure, who run our Life Centre and other valued public amenities, increased funding for them too. And of course, we still have an ambitious capital programme. I'll be saying a little bit more about that in due course. And of course, the recommendations that we'll be making initially to scrutiny are contained in the report. So that's my introduction. And now, to make sense of all of that, I asked David Northey to come in.
Leader, you have a good way of saying everything that needs to be said and then say, can you come in and supplement that? So thank you. Hopefully, I will apologise for the lateness of the report, but as the leader did explain, we were making sure that we had absolute up-to-date information, and very pleased to be able to sit here with a balanced budget position. So absolutely, we have a legal requirement to balance the budget, but how we get there is the story. The fact that we've had to use 5 million of one-off reserves tells its own story, but in essence, that's quite a small number, and we do have plans to cover that when we get to the following year. So I'm not too concerned at this stage on that one. Hopefully, the report sets out the story for you, increased resources, the costs and the pressures, and there's some narrative that explains where those pressures have come from and how we're trying to deal with those, and then it also sets out the savings that we've put in place. The leader did say that we needed about 13.9 million of savings. Just to refine that a little bit, what I would call sort of 10 million of actual savings where plans need to be put in place, and then the rest of it will come from where we're going to tidy up some budgets with where funds have not been used for maybe the previous year or so, so we'll tidy up. So actually the pain should be fairly minimal, and that's easy for me to say. It's you as cabinet members who have to deliver it. The only other thing I would add, Leader, is obviously this is the draft that will go into scrutiny next week. We'll come back in February, hopefully having received the final settlement numbers, so we will know the ups and downs and ins and outs of all of that, and that report will then be your proposal to go into full council for the council tax setting and to actually sign off the budget. Part of that report will include from me a statement on how robust I feel this budget is. So it is part of my duties to write what I think about that. I'm still mulling that through. Anybody who read last year's budget will know that there were quite a few risks that I identified. Most of those we've covered off. So hopefully that statement will not come as a surprise to anybody. It will be covering the areas that we're always talking about, which is children's social care, home to school transport, adult social care, homelessness, emergency bed and breakfast. So those remain the risk areas. It's how we deal with those going forward is what I need to pull forward, and I will put that into some kind of risk register so that we can have full transparency on that. Other than that, Leader, I'd like to thank all the officers who have supported me and my team in putting this together, and of course cabinet members as well. It's never an easy task, but I think this year in particular there have been a few surprises along the way, but we've managed to get to this point, so I'd like to thank everybody for their support. Thank you.
David, thanks very much. It's too early to thank you profusely, but because obviously we've got to get it over the line in February, right? But I mean, I do want to, like you say, I do think it's important to acknowledge the fact that you're still here when you should be retired. You know, it's not lost on us how, you know, much of a public servant you are, David, and you know, we're ever so grateful for your time and that of your partner. So, what I would say now is, I mean, this is, you know, there's going to be a lot of talking about this coming through, right? But has anybody got anything they want to say now? Or are you saving your powder for later on? Oh, there's a couple. So you've already spoken today, so I'm going to come first of all to Sally Hayden, then to Sally Creswell, and I'll come back to you in the end, Chris.
Thank you, Leader. I just wanted to pick up what you were saying that, you know, this budget, not only have we literally got a deadline on the budget and we've not closed any libraries, what we're not telling everybody is we're not closing any libraries, we're actually extending our libraries. So I'm really pleased to say, as from the 27th of January, thanks to the 5th anniversary of St Buzo Library, it will be, we will now be additionally opening on a Wednesday to make that library in line with all other libraries compared to that size. So one, we haven't cut, we've extended. So that's more services coming into our city. So once again, thank you to officers for everything that they've done. Thank you.
Sally Creswell.
Thank you, Leader. I just wanted to pick up here. It's the increased, it's a one-off for staffing for increasing the processing as far as EHCPs, educational healthcare plans. And anyone who's had, in fact, my first introduction to being in the cabinet was in fact that we had a SEND inspection. And one of the areas which has been difficult and challenging and has caused so much anxiety for parents and children and carers is actually the processing of the EHCPs. And that has been a real challenge. And I am delighted to say that we have we need to do this, that additional finance is going in there for additional staffing. And we can see some of the work that's been going on already and the impact that's had in terms of we have far fewer, I'm not going to say complaints, but I'm going to say is I think there's been far less in the way of anxiety, because it's real anxiety if you're a parent and a carer and that application for an educational health care plan doesn't go through the smooth process that it should go through and actually is processed in time. And I think this is really, really important, and we will see an increasing impact, and we will be able to do the catching up that's necessary. And there's been a lot of work that's happened so far, and we've seen real positive outcomes. So I want to say that just in terms of that money being allocated to that budget, but also thank you to the incredible work that has been done by officers and staff as far as the council is concerned. So thank you.
Thank you, Sally. Chris.
Yes, thank you, Leader. I've made no secret over the last 21 months or whatever it is that we're in the middle of a housing crisis, and that continues. I'm really pleased that this budget maintains the support for housing that we previously committed to, and last year we substantially increased our support for housing in the budget. That is in there now as baseline, and really importantly so, because we have seen increased demand coming through for people in need of housing support. We have, as I've said here before, made prevention and a move from pay by night to temporary our priorities. I'm really pleased that that journey is continuing and that we're going to be able to do more of that in the coming year. And that is in thanks not only to us maintaining, but a big thank you to the government for an additional £724,000 of support for homelessness, which will mean that we can do targeted prevention work more effectively as well, because we know full well if we can stop someone from becoming homeless, that is a much bigger impact than saving someone once they have become homeless. So really big thanks to government for that, and that will be good news to all of our partners. As I've been talking to them last year in advance of knowing what the settlement was, they were saying, please, 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 can we do some more prevention, because that will be a really important thing. So they like the temp move, and this is good news. We know ultimately we need more housing. We need more affordable housing, we need more private rented housing, and we need more housing for people to buy. And Plan for Homes 4, which we agreed last March, has now an action plan and everything behind that. I'm really pleased that we haven't taken any of our revenue budget support away from the broader Plan for Homes agenda, as well as putting more money into homelessness. It shows our commitment to housing. I'm looking forward in February, if all goes to plan, to bring you an update report on our homelessness services, and in April to bring you a report on our first year of Plan for Homes, including what we've done in terms of performance against our targets. So we will be coming back with some of the practicalities, but I wanted to say that the budget underpins that, not only because of our commitment, but also because the government has committed to more money for homelessness, for which I'm very grateful. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you very much. Tom?
Thank you, Leader. You mentioned about grass cutting, so I thought I'd just build on that point. Last year, you remember that one of the announcements I made was around an increase, £300,000 to the revenue budget for that part of the grounds team. That has delivered a huge increase in performance over the last year. We doubled the regularity of grass cutting on play parks and busy junctions, and we're really pleased that that increase has continued again, and hopefully we'll be delivering even more on that area. You also mentioned the Climate Emergency Investment Fund. It's a really important part of our net zero efforts. It's essential for decarbonisation, but it's also significant financially as well. We've done a piece of work recently looking at how much our net zero efforts have saved other council departments, and we've calculated that's roughly in the range of about £500,000 of energy efficiency savings every single year. So restoring that ratchet means that we can continue to build on that. And finally, I wanted to note that this report shows that we've got roughly £65 million in the capital programme linked to net zero projects. It's a huge, ambitious amount. And I just wanted to draw out one of the examples from that, which is about food waste. It's there in terms of our investment into the bins and vehicles that will help us introduce a food waste delivery service for domestic properties for the first time in the coming years. Thank you.
Yeah, it's going to be a big year for that department, I think, Tom, and I think people have noticed the difference that money that you managed to wrestle out of us actually delivered last year, so it'd be good to see it continue. Mary?
Thank you, Leader. Whilst I welcome the increase in adult social care monies coming in, I also welcome the increased budget that's coming into the public health unit, because that plays so much part in the council's life. You know, there are bits of money from public health, making sure there's preventative work, making sure there's sports activities, etc. going on. So to see that £750,000 rise. I mean, whether it was because Stephen's come to join us, whether he attracted the money, I don't know. But, you know, it's got to be welcome. And I'm looking forward to seeing how we make sure that that money is well spent, because we have got some brilliant services in Plymouth. If we look at our records about smoking cessation and things like that, you know, we need to keep that going to improve our health, to help the NHS. Let's be honest about it. This is where preventative work is really, really important. Thank you, Leader.
Oh, thank you, Mary. That's great. And I look forward. What I would say to Steve is make sure it was down to you before you claim the credit, because we're happy to give you the credit when it's due. We're very good at that. So what we're looking from you, though, Steve, is spending that money. We look forward to hearing how you're going to do that in due course. Now, I wanted to... We've been having a lot of discussion about LGR and stuff, right? So that's kind of coming, and I'll be saying something about that towards the end of the meeting. But I think what we might be useful, and I don't know whether there's any way we can get this out during the scrutiny process, David, but it's this thing around how much our budget is. Because I've talked many times in this environment about this thing we got called net pounds, which we seem to have, which don't exist anywhere else except in local government. because we have to create, in order to set the council tax, we have to first of all describe our net budget, which is the money left over after we've covered most of the cost, and the council tax makes up the gap. Now, but we spend far more than the net budget would seem to suggest, do we not? And I think it might be useful for our discussions around LGR and what is ahead of us if we could find a way of also talking about the totality of the money that we spend. Because I think it would give people a better idea of just how big Plymouth City Council is at the moment. So, for example, in terms of the business with devolution deals, you know, Plymouth's share of what is currently on the table is just £8 million. And if you for skills, and if you think about the money we spend in total as a council, it's what would it be? 50 times that. So it's getting people to understand just how big the council budget is. And Councillor Penberthy explained the contribution the council tax make, but actually there's a lot of other things that make the contribution towards the money that we get in. So, for example, we're going to discuss fees and charges in a minute. That's one element of it, and there are a number of others, grants we've just been talking about. But it would be, I think it would be a good idea if we could, at least somewhere, even if it's one or two sentences on the subject, perhaps make that clear. There will be a number of councillors who, for the first time, will be hearing about how we make the budget. And so they will be, as I still am, puzzled by this reference to net budgets as opposed to the totality of the spending. So when we're explaining it to our constituents and to council taxpayers, it gives them a better idea of just how big the council spending is in our economy. Is that all right? Now, for today though, we have some recommendations. These are on page one of the draft budget report, the supplement pack 2. Okay. Now it's recommended that we note this report and that it's subject to change in line with any final settlement adjustments and changes required as proposals are developed. And then there's a second recommendation that we recommend this report to the Budget Scrutiny Select Committee, which will consider this next Tuesday and Wednesday? Yeah, okay. All right. So I'm going to ask you if you're content to do that. Can you show in the usual way, please? Thank you. That's one against. Councillor Coker. Oh, sorry. All right. It's unanimous. Unanimous. Thank you very much indeed. Now, I mentioned fees and charges, and item 10 on the agenda is that we have a range of fees and charges for discretionary and statutory services that we provide. Now, the fees, charges and concession policy that was adopted a long time ago now, nearly 10 years ago, states that each financial year discretionary fees and charges will generally be increased by the CPI, the Consumer Price Index. Now, the policy states that all fees and charges should recover costs. When the cost of providing services increases, it is important that fees and charges also increase to keep pace with those rising costs. So it's proposed that discretionary fees and charges are generally increased by at least 5% plus rounding from the 1st of April 2025 to enable that to happen. And the recommendations are set out in the report. David, do you want to add anything to that?
Just a couple of things, if I might, Leader. We talked about CPI in terms of the government and what their number was that they used to uplift our funding, which was 1.7%. So why are we saying CPI 5%? Well, of course, that 1.7 is a snapshot, and if we move from September to the October, it would have been 2.3%, so you can see. But what we're trying to do here is cover the fact that costs have been rising continually throughout that period. So 5% is not unreasonable, and we do need to make sure that we cover all of the rising costs. And a lot of the costs of the services that we provide will come from staff costing which is rising by more than 1.7%, as we know. So that's just to put that one in place. And I suppose the other thing is that this is discretionary fees and charges. What it does not cover is our sort of car parking, which has its own policy and is subject to separate reviews. So hopefully that's helpful.
That's very helpful, David. Any questions? Not for me, obviously, but for David. Okay, all good. So the recommendation for this is, I mean, we're not changing policy, we're following policy, is on page 15 of the supplement pack, the first of your supplement packs. And that's to agree the uplift of discretionary fees and charges by at least 5% plus rounding from the 1st of April 25. All those in favour, please show. Thank you. And that's great. And that does that go to scrutiny, or is that going straight to council now, or is that done?
That we're done.
Right, okay, so we've taken that decision, okay? Now, we now move on to item 11. Start off with announcements from the leader of the council. So it's, I wanted to start with some good news about economic development. Now, you'll know from the conversations that I have been having lately about devolution, and that the government in its English devolution bill, which was published just before Christmas, was talking about the creation of what they've called strategic combined authorities. Now, the purpose of these strategic combined authorities, amongst other things, is to basically create frameworks for regions around things like economic development, strategic transport, and so on. In other words, not to run the local dog catching services or stuff like that, not to run councils, but actually to deliver a kind of vision for the region which takes in the aspirations and desires of a constituent area. So, for example, in our case, such a strategic economic plan would include our ambitions around the dockyard, for example, our ambitions on things like marine autonomy and all of those other things. Yeah, and floating offshore wind, amongst other things. So what we would be striving for would be putting together a case which described the contribution that the South West Peninsula would be making to UK PLC going forward. And by making that case quite strongly with a single voice, what we would actually be able to do then is to compete against other people. Let's say in the southwest of England alone, we would have Wessex, the Wessex region, which is currently underway and being formed, which forms an arc, including Dorset, Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole, Somerset and Wiltshire. And that would, alongside the pre-existing West of England Combined Authority, all of these places would be making their own case for resources to government. But they make a strong case because they are combined and they have one view and one voice, and a voice that's been arrived at by negotiation and discussion with their constituent areas. That would be what I have been calling for the South West Peninsula. It is not another layer of governing over us, but what it is a route to cash from the government and authority and power from the government. Power and authority and cash that is currently spent by Westminster on us without sometimes us agreeing. And so I'm excited about the opportunity for a new economic settlement, because most of the stuff we do at local level on economic development is actually all discretionary anyway. It's not, we don't have to do economic development, but in future, it's the growth agenda sort of invites us to take that responsibility a lot more seriously. And of course, we already do take it very seriously here. I mean, let me just go through some numbers from the economic development team. this is me being a bit naughty because this is my portfolio rather than me being a leader, but I think I still need to tell you. 28 million income generated, an investment pipeline of 5.5 billion pounds, capital investment secured 280 million, jobs pipeline of 7,000, and of course the #1 place in the country in the PwC survey for good growth. So that not a bad 2024 actually, I think it's fair to say. But let's just, once again, I think it's important to make sure, because like sometimes I look at the comment section of Plymouth Live and I wonder why the hell we're actually getting up in the morning. Are we doing anything? So I just thought I'd give a few reminders of what we have achieved. You know, Millbay Port facilities, we have enabled and helped to part fund a £23 million investment in our port. The community diagnostic hub down at Colin Campbell Court, we've been able to start on site with a new £32.5 million investment there. The Derryford District Centre, you know, we got that investment, I think it's fair to say. A new Marks and Spencer's and other district shopping facilities for the locality as well. It's a fantastic project. £19 million that investment brought in. The Freeport, £25 million of seed capital allocated. We were the first Freeport to do that. Not the only one now, I think there's another one that's managed to do that, but we were the first. The Ocean Gate Innovation Barns, we secured funding and planning permission for that. That's a £7 million investment down there in our marine innovation zone. The Beaumont Way Direct Development, I went out there with the JCB. I managed to avoid the standard photograph of sitting in the cab, but that's underway now. That's an £8 million direct development at Langage. Fantastic. I mean, it's 20 years, I think, since I did the first one of that. I avoided the JCB, I think, on that one as well. But we've done quite a few of these. I think there's 11 of these we've done. Tavistock Place, we've started the demolition of disused buildings there in Tabby Place to enable the next phase of cultural development when we get round to that. And there's a £10 million waterfront regeneration begun at Tinside. I don't know whether you managed to see the BBC Spotlight piece on that a week ago. It was excellent, I think, and we've also now awarded contracts for the Mountbatten Centre over on the peninsula there, which is the start of a wholesale regeneration of the peninsula there for all sorts of activities. And the plans for the Mountbatten Centre are going to be a fantastic destination, and an upgrade of some sad facilities, which we will be bringing up into 21st century standards. Sue, if Sue Dan was here, she'd talk to you about the Brickfields regeneration, I'm sure, which we now need to call Fulston Park. And we're all getting used to that, but that's what we mean when we sort of talk about Fulston Park. But look, you know, what's there? New pitches, hockey, pétanque, community hub, and of course Plymouth Argyle Youth Academy will be living there now, not literally, but you know what I mean. Did we mention the Guildhall refurbishment? £4 million refurbishment of our wonderful Guildhall, where music and entertainment will be returning in force when we finish that project. As Chris Robinson is often fond of telling me, the Guildhall was the home to the first ever concert of the Emerson, Lake and Palmer Progressive Rock Group. And that is going back, because that was 1970, I think. But there's a real opportunity there for that city centre music and entertainment hub to be a real boon to our plans for the city centre. And of course the Civic Centre. which we keep talking about, but a £75 million investment next door to us here, taken back in-house by the council to develop a blue-green skills hub and housing in partnership with our friends Homes England. And the Property Regeneration Fund, of course, which we started a little while ago, £54.3 million approved by the City Council for a development project at Mill Bay, Embankment Road and at Western Mill. So if anybody needed proof that Plymouth drives growth in this part of the world and that cities are an essential driver of growth, then I think that's it. It doesn't happen by accident, because you know, we've made sure as politicians to retain an active department to do this. We've invested in a brilliant team who repay our investment time and time again. So that would be what I would say about that. So I want to make sure that everybody understands that this sort of stuff, this is what councils do. And it's that sense of knowledge of place. But it's also fair to say that the government is very keen on ending the lottery of funding bids, the beauty contests that we've been having to participate in for the last 14 years. Bidding for money that used to come to us as of right, and then potentially losing some of that money if you lose the competition. So the government's plan to end those beauty contests is very welcome, but one of the ways in which they're going to make that money available to councils is through the route of strategic combined authorities. And that is the principal way in which this money will be coming our way. And so it's important that everybody kind of gets that message. It's not about super councils. It's not about amalgamations. It's not about mergers. It's none of that. That isn't what it is. What it is a strategic level where willing neighbours work together for their mutual benefit and to draw down cash and power from Westminster, which for too long has controlled everything. And therefore, it gives us the opportunity to determine our own future. That's what's at stake. So that's my report for the day. So I'm going to avail myself now of the cabinet updates, and I'll start with Jemima.
Thank you very much, Leader. I want to start with a very big thank you to the community of Plymouth for supporting our Christmas gifts for our care leavers appeal. We saw a phenomenal amount of support from Plymouth City Council staff, business and wider Plymouth community who kindly donated Christmas gifts for our care experienced young people community. Every single one of our care leavers and their children were given at least one gift, exceeding 250 gifts, as well as donations purchasing specific gifts and funding the Christmas dinner. I think this generous support from our Plymouth community just shows how much Plymouth cares. It's really heartwarming, and we want to say really, really big thank you to everybody. One young person sent us a message saying, "Thank you so much for these lovely gifts. I've got the socks on now, and I'm just about to test out these headphones. I'm so happy, thank you." So that says it all. I'm just blown away by how kind everybody was in response to that appeal. I want to offer congratulations to two of our retired Foster for Plymouth foster carers, Dave and Colleen Healy, who received British Empire medals in the King's New Year's Honours List in recognition of their extraordinary work and dedication to fostering. Dave and Colleen fostered for us between 2005 and 2020 and welcomed 45 different children into their home during this time. Dave was also a member of our corporate parenting board for a number of years, where he enjoyed representing the voices of his fellow foster carers. So huge congratulations to both of them from all of us. Thoroughly, thoroughly deserved. Our 3 annual You Can Do It award ceremonies for children in care and care experienced young people took place in September and November, with record numbers of nominations and attendees at the awards. In total, 1,231 nominations were received for over 600 different children and young people in care, aged 14 to 18, and our care experienced young people aged 18 to 25. Over 200 children, young people, their carers and guests attended the 3 different events, all of which were bigger and better than ever. And we were at all those events, and the atmosphere was just brilliant. So thank you to those who supported the events, and also the people who organised those events, because they really don't scrimp on detail. It's just really fantastically done, and contributions from councillors and others really do make these very important events possible. So huge thank you. Moving on to the box, very successful Christmas at the box with loads of events. I wanted to mention that the breakfast with Santa, there were 452 guests at breakfast with Santa. It was sold out and was a great success. We've got new exhibitions opening at the box on Saturday the 8th of February, including John Lyon's Carnivalesque and an exhibition about Windrush in the far southwest, which explores Plymouth's perhaps little known links to the migration of people from the Caribbean. And Osman Yusuf Sada's exhibition is still at St Luke's. It's definitely worth a visit, where his work explores issues of power and class, and has busks of Mark Zuckerberg, Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk. So you might describe it as a fairly timely piece of work. The Jeremy Deller project, The Triumph of Art, with the National Gallery to mark the gallery's 200th anniversary, is really gaining momentum. Deller is one of the foremost artists of his generation, and Plymouth is only one of 4 places in the UK, and the box is the only English venue to participate in the programme. Dates for your diary include Saturday 5th of July, where we will have a Jeremy Deller event in Plymouth, and Saturday 26th of July, which will be a massive celebration in Trafalgar Square. And I wanted to just talk very briefly about the Devonport 200 Community History Day, which took place on Saturday. Absolutely amazing day. We had almost 1,500 visits to the box on Saturday, and over 300 people dropped into the Fulston room, which set up for the Community History Day, and around 60% of those people that came on Saturday to the Fulston room were first-time visitors to the box, which I think is really important. That's their first visit, so I really hope that they'll be back. We actually sent a postcard to residents in Devonport to personally invite them, and they came in their droves, and we had 25 potential acquisitions for the collection, including objects, photos and documents. Lots of the people were in multi-generational family groups or friendship circles, and so many people bumped into old friends and neighbours, and there were many, many trips down memory lane. The whole place came alive with stories and conversations. Councillor Coker, I know that you came, and Councillor Creswell, and I was there, and it was just a great atmosphere, and the place was absolutely buzzing. So we had local Plymouth visitors, as well as people from Exeter, Newton Abbot, Camborne and Falmouth. Many of them saw the really great piece on BBC Spotlight, heard about it on local radio, and a lot of people who received the postcards came as well. So that event was a real success, and a fantastic day, and a great model for future Super Saturdays. Thanks, Lita.
Well, that's quite an awesome little package you unveiled there. Incredible. Right, does anybody else have any good news? Sally Cresswell.
Thank you, Leader. Just briefly, because I have talked quite a lot anyway about results in 2024 of examination results, but I just wanted to bring a couple up here, which are particularly encouraging. So first of all, I just wanted to look at its early years and also our Key Stage 4 SEND results as well. And so, first of all, the early years outcomes for 2024 are improved on our previous year, with 66.7% of children achieving an overall good level of development, which we call GLD, which is moving closer to the national average of 68%. And within that, it's looking at our youngest children in foundation stage and looking at their subjects and their good level of development in subjects like literacy, maths, understanding the world, speaking and expressive arts, and also physical development. And I think what's encouraging is the work that's being done with our place-based team, and particularly on early language acquisition. We're starting to perhaps see the impacts of some of that. So that's very, very encouraging, very good to see how professionals are working so well and so hard to make sure our youngest children have the the necessary strategies and abilities they have in order to further access the curriculum. As far as year one is concerned, again, our youngest children, our phonics screening check outcomes remain strong, which they have been in the past. But 81.2% achieved the standard score, which was above our results, which is above 2024 national average of 80% and the previous city's average as well. So we're now on city average of being like 80% or more, and national average 79%. So we're actually really moving in the right direction, which is very, very encouraging. And again, the early end of Key Stage 2 results, the overall results for reading, writing and maths combined, are improved again on the previous year. And finally, which is really relevant in terms of some of our children, our young people who are special educational needs, either special educational needs because they have an EHCP or because they have SEND support in school. So that's before necessarily having an EHCP, but having additional support in school. There's a real improvement with those young people on previous years in terms of Attainment 8 and Progress 8. And that Progress 8 is the progress that those youngsters are making from primary to secondary school. And we're particularly then looking at those really important key subjects of maths, English, science, computer science, geography and history. And that is really, again, really encouraging. And I don't want to say that we've solved all the problems and everything is great, because there's always more work to be done. But what's important is that we are moving very much in the right direction, and we've got a really good focus that we're working on as a local authority, and working in fact with schools and professionals and teachers and such to make sure that there are the absolute best outcomes for all our children, whatever age, whatever their ability, to make sure that they actually achieve their life chances. So thank you, Leader.
Well, that is a nice uplifting set of numbers for us to consider, isn't it? Has anybody else got anything? Councillor Chris Penberthy.
Thank you, Leader. I just wanted to update you on 3 Plan for Home sites. The first of those is the last time I'll bring this to Cabinet. Sterling House in Honick Knoll has now celebrated its opening. So I just wanted to tell you again about what Sterling House is, because it's the last time we'll be talking about it. This was one of our Plan for Home sites where we released it with a site planning statement, and our partner was Live West. So we, together with MPs, the developers, the builders, and local residents, joined together in October to celebrate. This was a development of 25 high-quality, affordable homes on the site of our old Sterling House care home, which was long redundant and not fit for purpose, and the old doctor's surgery, which was long redundant and not fit for purpose. So we did a bit of one public estate and married the sites up. We cleared it. Live West developed it. And it's much more than just affordable housing. And it looks great. And thank you to Graham Lobb from Form Design for that. It was, I think, one of his last major designs before he retired. But it also provided 8 service veterans with the opportunity to learn skills and be involved in a self-build project. And they're living there. Single people in some of the flats and families living in accommodation that they helped to build, and became part of the community as they did so. So our thanks to depending how you say it, and it gets said both ways, Alabre or Alabare Housing for their work on recruiting and supporting the veterans, to Live West for the work they did, and for the support not only from Live West, but from Homes England as well, to make all of that work. We played a key role, not only in land assembly and in clearing the land and making it able to be developed, so decontaminating it. We released it for £1, and we made a contribution of £400,000 from our Plan for Homes investment fund to make sure that that affordable housing got delivered. So a great partnership project, really good quality. I'm sure you've seen it on the corner of Honicknell Green as you go past. The brickwork is amazing, and for those people who like brick bonding, go and see what Graham did on the design, because there were lots of different bond patterns on that building. The second site is Colebrook Road in Plimpton. Now this is one where post-COVID, it was started before COVID, the developer went bust, and they'd already started, so there was that whole reign of, can we start on the site, can't we start on the site, can we get someone else in to do it? A real big thanks to Westwood Housing Group, who've worked with our own housing delivery team and got that site restarted. And that's quite an achievement at this point in time. That's going to be 43 affordable homes, 20 for social rent, 14 for shared ownership, and 9 rent-to-buy properties. And they'll be completed over the next 18 months. We helped fund that project with £300,000 gap funding between the money that Colebrook and Homes England were able to put in. So our £300,000 has levered those 43 homes that otherwise would not have been built. So a bit of money and a bit of staff time, and we can resolve sites. So a different sort of site there under Plan for Homes. And the final one, this is probably the last time I'll talk about this one here, might not be, but I just thought I'd update you on Broadland Gardens. This is the first time the council's gone out to build some homes in decades, probably more than 40 years. And rather unusually, we've built homes for sale. And that's for a couple of reasons. One was we needed to prove to the market that you could build low carbon, sustainable, high design, high quality homes within the Plymouth affordability sort of grid. And it was one of our derelict youth centres, asbestos ridden, and had to be removed. We have built 10 homes. 4 have been sold, with the first 2 families moving in before Christmas, the other 2 on their way in now. And 2 further ones have been reserved with deposits paid. So that's 60% of development done with actually the first moves in December. That's really good in this marketplace. People out at Sherford and in Saltram Meadows and Palmerston Heights would be jealous of that sort of sale rate, as would most small developers. So really good news. And so our agents are anticipating that over the next few months the 4 will sell, as there's already substantial interest in those. Obviously, the funding for all of that came from our Plan for Homes Fund, and all receipts are being cycled back into it. And I'm looking forward, maybe the next thing I'll be able to tell you is where we spend the surplus we make on that site in supporting more affordable housing in Plymouth to help meet our acute housing need, whilst having done the bit, have proven that we can deliver in Plymouth high quality housing that meets zero carbon and family aspiration, because that was, volume house builders need to see it, but also our local market needs to see it as possible. So big thank you to Classic Builders, who are our partner on that site. And as I said, that's another one coming to conclusion, but some really good news stories from Plan for Homes 4. Obviously, none of those deliver the volume we yet need, but we're nibbling away at the problem. We still need thousands more homes being delivered in the city. So if developers are out there and want to deliver, get in touch with the teams, get in touch with me, I'll pass you on. We do want to deliver and work in partnership to do so. Thank you.
Lovely stuff. I know you said it was the last time we're going to talk about Sterling House, but you know that opening thing that you said, Did anybody did you go to the opening?
Yes, I was there. Um, the local MP was there. Luke Pollard had been invited as a defence minister. So we were all able to say a few things. One of the veterans spoke and talked about the big difference it had made to their lives. And actually what's interesting is the veterans who are not only homeless, but either in low skilled or unemployed, have been through training and development, and they're doing all sorts of jobs, from historic stonework masonry through to gardening, but they've picked things up, they've done things, and they have turned their lives around, and they were telling those stories. So it was really good. Live West did quite a lot of comms out of the back of that, as it was their site. And I think there might even be a video on Facebook.
I think it'd be useful to capture that in terms of maybe letting other people know that that happened. In terms of the veterans, are they all from the Navy or were they from a variety?
They were from a variety of different backgrounds. Some of them had been based in Plymouth, some of them had family in Plymouth, some of them just ended up in Plymouth through the normal homelessness circuit. We have pushed ahead, so the latest government guidance on terms of veteran housing, we've been doing all of that for years here in Plymouth. We've given people the bump, we've not required the local connection. So actually they've come in through our system, and actually Alabare have been quite influential in that, but not the only people. Some were living in really substandard private rented accommodation in that they were overcrowded and couldn't afford to move out to anywhere else. And so it gave them that leap from not having a fulfilling life to doing something very different and living. And in fact, the first veterans to move in were one of the families, and they were providing builders with tea and bacon baps and just being really friendly to everyone on the site because it had made so much difference, sort of transformational for their children. So there were lots of stories. Obviously, we're being careful about the veterans, but I know Councillor Murphy gave one of the veterans who was really keen on gardening and chose a ground floor flat so she'd have a garden. It was the biggest garden, that was her choice. But actually, Alderman Vincent's gardening tools, some of them went to that veteran who is actually pursuing a career in landscaping and gardening, following the work that was done, a transformed life. So a lot of that has been captured. It's been really brilliant to see, and just goes to show what fantastic partnerships there can be. We've recently given some funding to Alabare to work with Clarion, and 4 veterans are currently involved in self-build in Barton through another investment from the Plan for Homes funding.
Wonderful. Any other reports from you folks? No, all done? Well, thanks very much. I mean, that's quite an inspirational place to finish that update, Chris. So last item today is LGA update. Obviously, we mentioned the provisional finance settlement, and we also talked about the lobbying success for this council and our partners and the LGA itself, because you know we've started a positive change. I think the government is definitely listening to local authorities, and that's a very good news. Obviously, it was very welcome making sure that we had the money to cover our national insurance rise costs, and we're looking forward to hearing a bit more about where the NI money that was raised for the health service is going to end up. Obviously, we want to make sure that our role in prevention is recognised, and I'm sure we'll continue to do that and pressurise. Obviously, the LGA has been involved in the discussions around the devolution white paper, spent a lot of time listening to what's going on around different parts of the country. The LGA's position is that every council in England needs to be able to secure devolution, but that it works for them, their local economies and their residents. And whilst different areas will have strong views on what devolution look like, genuine devolution of powers and resources can play a huge role in promoting inclusive economic growth, creating jobs and improving public services, and that's what it's all about. So we'll continue to make sure that we keep them in the loop as to what's happening in our part of the world. Those of you who were lucky enough to catch Politics Southwest on Sunday will have seen a brief discussion about the Independent Commission on Social Care that Louise is running. And what I would say is we're looking for an adult social care review, which will last, I think is fair to say. The extra money that we're getting at the moment, it was welcome. We mentioned it in our budget discussions, but actually, you know, what we need to make sure is that whatever ends up coming out of Louise Casey's review is kind of permanent and long lasting, and more importantly, is bought into by all parties. That's fundamental. So it's really important. The LGA is saying to government very loudly and clearly that the voice of local government needs to be front and centre of this review. If it's not going to work. It's just one place where top down ain't going to work, because fundamentally we have a role to play in making sure this works. We provide many of the services that actually that are under discussion. So it's important that we feed into the review. LGA will feed into the review, but it's most important that we as a council make our views on this very plain, and we've got many ways in which we can respond. So there's a lot going on, and I'm sure again there's been plenty of meetings of the council group with the Chancellor over the up and coming medium-term financial plan and about the comprehensive spending review. There's lots of input from local government into this, and hopefully we'll see the benefit of that in due course. Okay, well, I think that draws to a conclusion the first of our cabinet meetings for the year 2025. Obviously, the budget's been the biggest thing today, and we've got a few more weeks to go yet before the council tax bills will be thudding onto people's doormats. If in fact that's how we still do it, do we thud or do we email? We still thud. So as we sit here today, we're hoping that our timetable that we have set out is the one that we end up with, but things could change over the next few weeks. So, you know, as usual, we'll be agile in that space. All I could say to the local community is that the council will continue to try and work with your money and spend it as carefully and wisely as we can for the benefit of all. There are some members of the community that need our help more than others, and we'll continue to try and make sure that they don't get left behind. That's what we do. That's our job. So thank you all for today, and we'll see you next week, probably in scrutiny. We'll see most of you. Take care, and thanks everybody for today.